Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show on the latest and greatest Onshape updates. My name is Mike LaFleche. They call me the professor sometimes. So, wicked nice to see you all. Happy Thanksgiving. It's not Thanksgiving. Happy St. Patrick's Day here in Boston on Monday. We had the parade yesterday. It's a great time to take a look at Onshape, I think, on a day like this. It's a beautiful, warm spring day, and I can't think of a better thing to do at my lunch break than to, share some time with some fellow Onshapers. So thank you all for joining me here today. We have a ton to go over in today's update. As you know, there's a ton of improvements, a lot of stuff on the forum. Let's just take a quick peek at the forms, which everybody knows you can get to from inside of Onshape, or just go to the forums directly. But here I can click on what's new, which brings me to the vibrant Onshape forums. Let's just start right at the top here and take a look at some of the reactions here. Our friend Michael Pasco here, is excited about the custom texture workflow in the Render Studio. That was a something that could use some improvement, so that it certainly has. This one was a big one, of course, being able to kind of see in a model-based way, like what your what your threads look like on your 3D model. You don't want to like draw threads on everything. That's not really necessary for the most part, unless you're doing 3D printing or some kind of thread that needs to be molded in. But cosmetic threads help you understand that, yes, indeed, I have a quarter 20 socket head, screw pitch, or right on my hole here, or an external thread that you apply to a custom shaft or something like that. Simon here got some great stuff here. So yeah, definitely look through the comments here, and you'll see something that you'll probably agree with, or thought, oh yeah, I just needed that yesterday. That always happens. So definitely throwing any comments on whatever platform you're watching from, and I can try to get them live here for you. But without further ado, let's just jump right in to some of my favorite improvements. There are a ton of them, as you know. So let's take a look here at this. We got a jackhammer here, and the very first thing I noticed, I always like to just open up my demo sets, see what they look like after the update, because Onshape does all that for you, right? If you look through your timeline, you'll see, you search for update in this list here, there's automatic updates that will happen, in your timeline, right? So, just think about that if you haven't, yet. The Onshape service provides updates to all of your Onshape documents, and it actually includes it as an audit trail item in there. In the feature or versions and history page, which is great for audits and things and knowing what's going on. But the first thing I noticed was the cosmetic threads when I started doing an exploded view of this. I have an exploded view here to service the chisel, for this particular design here. And let me just go back to the view there. And if you zoom on in here, you can tell very nicely that we have some threads in there. And I love the way they look. Some of these things are minor things, but just spending a little extra time on making sure the threads actually look right in whatever lighting. It's not like a simple decal, being applied to the part, where a decal, you could certainly throw in a decal to show this kind of stuff, right? But it's not going to react the way this is with lighting. Now, by the way, a lot of people will like to add colors, like, this green face right here is indicating a machined face on this part. You can certainly blend in the colors and things like that, right? So if I get out of the exploded view here, maybe switch to, this particular part. let's see. We'll switch to the cylinder cover and block part studio. See, there's my threads, of course. And, you can obviously see that, these are custom or holes showing up in the hole table, but I want to show you the appearance panel. Like, a lot of people will call things out with a machined face, and I'll actually call that out as such with the name of that feature. That way I know I'm looking at machined faces. And if I click, on any one of these holes, by the way, you can actually use more intelligent ways of picking the holes, like out of the feature tree. And you can see the the actual thread will respect the colors. Like, in my company, I like to see all green for cutting surfaces versus cast surfaces, like you see here. And now I can see that. So the cosmetic threads fully support that. So if you put in any kind of hole, let's just go into this hole and convert it to a threaded hole. We'll just edit that one right here. Right now it's just a clearance hole, but I'll call it out as tapped, right? And very quickly you can see the threads showing up. All right, I'll just cancel that. It will also work on external shafts and things like that. I bet if I go back to top level of the jackhammer here and dive into a crankshaft, how would I find it? I would just type in crank if I can spell it right. There we are, crankshaft, ref B. We'll just open that link document from whence that came. It's going to that engineering change order that I released it under. So let's just go to the main so I can actually make edits in a workspace. And perhaps this, should be a threaded region or something like that, right? Yeah, let's just go here. So you would use your external thread option. I just, started to type it in, but it's in the main external thread toolbar. Pick your external edge that you want to be threaded. And it will attempt to determine the actual size based on your selection, right? I might actually be in a metric. Let's see, workspace units. Yeah, I am in metric, so I should use a metric item here. Yeah, this is a terrible part to use this on. I should actually. This one looks a lot easier over here. Actually, let's put a thread on this. There we are. Now you can see the thread call out. I have an 11/16 ANSI, but let me go to ISO M18 blind. By the way, you can add undercuts and things like that right to this as physical geometry. And if I didn't have a chamfer already on this, if I had suppressed this one right here, just to show the full process, adding the external thread, you pick that edge, then you add your chamfer and undercut, right in there. And we'll set that as an ISO M18. There we are. So it looks pretty good, right? And of course, these will all show up, on your drawings as well. And that was one of the other new improvements, in here is you can dimension more directly to the thread items, right? You can see it's showing the threads called out in a proper way with the dashed line that you would expect to see. Just down here, clean up that up. And we'll add some dimensional information. I can actually click on the threads themselves and dimension, the depth of that thread. By the way, this is something I think you could always do. You can actually just point to something that happens to have a thread call out, like in the side view like that, and it will understand that as well. I have dual dimensioning turned on. That's why you're seeing two names showing up there. All right. So there are other things you could dimension to the depth of if you had the section view. of a. Let's see here. Let's just cut through here. That wasn't a tap. Not sure. But you can dimension to many different types of quantities now with your dimension callout options. As you can see, just picking on the dimension or the dotted line or the edge of something that contains a thread will pick up on that. So make sure, this is, I think it's more popular in the European standards to kind of dimension things out like that. I've seen that come up in the help system. All right. Let's continue on. So, let's just think if there's any other use cases for cosmetic threads. But if you really like that, hit a +1 in there in the chat. It's really nice to be able to just see the threads just pop up, pop out. Looks really nice in the way they shade it and things. So let's just go back to the main top level of this design. All right. So next up is the routing curve. So this is a big deal, right? We've had many different ways of adding 3D curves in Onshape, right? Instead of having one kind of master 3D sketch type feature, we've had these purpose-driven curves that work for particular workflows. I think this 3D curve option is really nice because you can use it for so many different things. And let's just go right in to something we want to put a 3D curve on. Let's just start basic first, just to kind of understand, how it works, right? Let me just turn off this reference here and turn off that. You can see I have a routing curve on here. I'll do a more complicated one just a second here, but just to set the stage, I have, let's just say I have nothing on the screen except an origin, right? Let's just turn the origin on. You can see that's where I am. Maybe I'll turn my planes on. Shift P is your best friend for, getting your reference geometry like planes show up. Shift P, sketches, things like that. That's a great keyboard shortcut. So the way the 3D curve or routing curve works, I'll type it in here. There's routing curve, appears underneath, all the different curve tool sets. And it will give you, the coordinate systems that match the colors of the Onshape directions. And, without even going into this big interface, which, gives you insane levels of power. Let's just go full screen so we can take a look at this, because it's really a big deal the way it, you can do so many things with it. Let's just do one thing. I might just want to create a tubing run or a wire run. Let's pretend it's tubing. That way you get some orthogonality to it, if that's even a word. So right now it's putting us in at 0.0. Okay. And as I click this arrow, what it will do is it will start drawing a curve for me. And if I type in 150, that'll be 150 millimeters. And now I have right over here, without even going to this box over here, I've got 150 millimeter vertical line curve element in Onshape. And then as soon as I click the next object, I'll be able to go ahead and create another one, at 100 millimeters. All right. Oh, let me start that fresh. Hold on. Routing curve. I'm going to start at a vertex point. I'd probably want to pick my origin in this particular case. And now I'll drop it up there, 150. All right. Now if I click again, I'm going to get another 150. Actually, let's start that fresh, because I did that wrong once again. So, all right, let's pick my vertex as the origin once again, and go right up here. So, by the way, your first point can just be the origin, right? You can select that from the drop-down list, or you can select your own vertex, which could be a make connector. It could be an existing curve that you use as an edge, and I'll show you that option in a minute. And it could be relatively positioned to something else. So let's just start at the origin. Go right up here. All right. Next one I'm going to pick from here. And I can move any point along, right? So I can pick a point and move it like that. I can add another point. That will actually go ahead and drag out in the next direction from the point that was at. So, all right. I don't know why that escaped me at first, but that's why we're doing this right now. So we can all kind of get through this together. All right. So origin, go right up there, 150. All right. And we're going to pick that point. Get another point from here. And we can move that point around. All right. So you just add points. And now we're getting a curve being pulled out like that. Now, of course, I can make it 3-dimensional, right? We got this live manipulator. Now we're pushing out another point from here and moving that point up. At another point from that location, and now we can add another further point, right? So very quickly, we're able to kind of get a 3D curve giving you the total length. You can change these positions at any time if you don't want to go anywhere in X. We just move that back to 0 on point 3. You make that 50, make it 100, right? So you can, get the numbers exactly, where you want, of course, or you can add points at that location now and move a new point from that kind of halfway through, right? So and as you select these points, you can see it gives you all the information for each point. Okay. Now, another use case, another way of using it is like using some existing reference geometry, which I find kind of a nice way of doing it because you can kind of have some scaffolding, for your curve, right? Let's just delete that one. I'll use the routing curve here. Kind of clever how it looks like an R, huh? And I'll just go ahead and you can click points like this to reference, right? So now I'm just clicking around like this. So if I wanted to have a nice curve that routes through all the back ends here and the top, you're seeing I'm getting a nice curve in there, and I can hide the reference. But maybe you want it to actually be orthogonal, right? So right now it's creating this using an interpolated spline, but you can then just go into the polyline option, right? And that gives you the actual straight lines, more for a tubing run, right? And you can add a bend radius that makes sense. I'll say 25. That might be big. 10. Yeah, there we are. And now we got this nice kind of tubing run, that we've built, using that reference originally, which would be very difficult to create without having the routing curve. Obviously, now you can use this, as a reference. Let's put a plane and a point right here I'll just use a make connector. That's usually the easiest way of getting the plane exactly where I want. And I will sketch out some kind of tube profile. Of course, I could use, like routed frame, like that. In fact, maybe I'll try that in just a second. But, I'll just sweep a sketch, along a path, which is this curve. And now we have our tube, placed the way we want. And of course, because it was generated by this extrusion earlier, if I hit the final button, I can say this is 100 instead. Of course, my routing curve is updating, you know, dynamically as I move that about. All right. So routing curve coming to the rescue in that particular scenario is really nice to see. Um, but you can do it by you can create all sorts of different orthogonal paths. I mean, this feature is very deep. It's very much like when I think of like the fillet, the face fillet, which has many different options. This also allows you to kind of be more of a general purpose tool now to create your 3D geometries. Okay. And if I wanted to go ahead to something more like in my jackhammer to create a cable or something like that, let's go ahead and try that out. Let's go into the jackhammer here, and I want to create an electrical cable, perhaps. Let's insert a part. Let's think it was called sheath. There it is, power cord sheath. I can drop that right here. Maybe I'll put in a cord. There it is. Plug, say. Actually, I want it to be that entire part studio. Yeah, maybe I'll start putting these in some folders, right? Yeah, I can add that to a folder. That's also part of the new update, having nested subfolders. So I could say this is the cord, and I can put that in the electrical or power folder here. Cord goes right in there, right? So now I can have that in there quick and easy. Yeah, I also want this to be kind of located over here. So now you can see I have like a 3D shape to route cable through. So how would I route a cable here in an assembly? Well, you create something called an in context relationship, right? So I would create a new part studio in context. You might might make it easier on yourself if you put in a mate connector where you want things to begin. I'll start that right here. And now I'll insert that from that mate connector. And if you really want, you can like hide some of this other stuff to get out of the way. But right now, I think it's fine to see. What it's going to do is give me a ghosted reference of all the parts. So now, I can start referencing, different things that I need to see, right? So I want to, maybe I'll put in a mate connector over here too, just so I know where I'm going from and to. Oh, I know what I did. All right, let's just do this. I'm going to call that wiring or cable. And we'll put our routing curve in. Going to start right here, go up. All right. This one I want to be a spline. Add a point. Okay. add that point right here. All right, now we're in business. All right, so I'll just keep on moving that along right here. Maybe I'll look at that from the right so it's a little easier to see where I'm heading above here. I like that. So I'll add another point. Drop down to here. All right, there we go. Add another point. Drop this to here. Add another point. Drop it back a little bit. Add another point. So obviously I could have done a little bit better, but there is another option here that I could have used now that I think about it, because there are some auto routing options. So let's just add one more point here. We'll drop that right. See how you can just drag that right to there and it'll snap on to another reference, right? Now we get a 1000 millimeter length item that we could draw a curve, along, a sweep of some sort, right? So that's one way of using it. The other way of using it is to actually import curves as well, if you didn't know that. So let's go into here. Let me go into the to this document right here. Like I have a shape for an airfoil, right? And I could use the routing curve function, for that, right? Let's just suppress these for a moment. So routing curve, and then in this case, instead of a vertex, I'm going to use a CSV file to import CSV. In this case, this is just a 2D CSV file, but I'll hit process so that way you can see the result of it. It was just the XYZ file created in Excel or Google Sheets or whatever. And you can just have X, Y, and Z coordinates. Of course, this was just X, Y because we have the 2D shape. But by the way, you can still orient and edit these points after the fact if you want to, right? You would just pick a point. So let me pick this one at the end. That'll make more sense. And I can override the points. Do that. So now I can start that curve over here. Pick this one and pull that in toward me in the Z direction. Just like that. Now we have a 3D curve from our original 2D curve. So really cool that you can do that kind of stuff. Let's unsuppress these. So from a routing curve, you could create boundaries and things like that. What I did is I just did the transform option here just to create 2 copies of that curve. Transform copy part just along distance, right? And then created boundary surface. That's one way of creating a boundary surface. With this, it's kind of an unsmooth shape though, but because that was the what came in with the routing curve. But you could use something called a constrained surface now to create a new surface from this. So that's also new in this update. You can take existing points or an entire mesh body to update this, right? So I got a better example. In fact, Michael Pasco shared a nice example of a violin because Greg Brown, our head of product, he uses a violin as a great example for this. You should check out on his YouTube channel a very deep dive into constrained surface. It's about a 20-minute video, and he goes through the different things that he did to clean up this violin. So I highly recommend you just kind of do a Google search on YouTube for Greg Brown and Onshape. You'll find his channel, and the latest video is of him working with the constrained surface. So I brought in Michael Pasco's violin, which he scanned in using a different scanner. We'll get into scanning in just a minute because there's been some new things, but Onshape has very good hybrid modeling environment where you can mix surfaces, curves, solids, and meshes that were created from either 3D scanner or some other application. And with the constrained surface tool, you can select vertex points along a surface. Let's say I wanted to get this area of the violin surfaced out. What I might do is create, just a selection of points along the way here. You see what I'm doing here? And just kind of clicking vertex points along. I can go kind of make myself a quilt. If I go and start picking points, along the way here. And this is a very dense mesh. There are different ways of taking meshes using some various mesh editing software, open source software that's out there that you could, simplify the mesh before bringing it in Onshape. That might be a good idea. But you can see, we've created a fairly interesting surface just by selecting a bunch of points on that, right? This is creating proper BREP, surfacing in Onshape, and it's doing it with a tolerance of 0.01 millimeters. There's two different optimization algorithms here that you can choose from: smoothness or performance, right? You can even show a deviation plot against the original. And that's just selecting a bunch of points on the surface. But you could select an entire mesh as well, right? So I think I have some meshes that are simple enough to do this with. Let's see here. I go into my imports on my desktop here. Text is so small, my apologies. Let's find a mesh just by STL here. I had one ready to go, but you know what? I might actually have it already imported. I have this drill. I don't think I've converted that one yet. Right. Let's just try one more time here because I had this ready to rock and roll, but when you're live, sometimes, well, at least for me, when I'm live, sometimes my I go a little astray because I get excited about seeing something. So here we are, mesh data. All right, these are the famous like bunny examples you get from various websites that you can. Well, that was a PLY file. I didn't want that one. All right, let's try this one. All right. I think that's what I can use something here. Okay, I may have brought it in with incorrect units. 2-inch. All right. So that should give me better luck. Okay. So if I wanted to, get a nice surface from here, because that's kind of like a nice flat face, I think the constrained surface would work really well on this area right here, right? If I click some points along the way, we're getting a pretty nice surface there. And we can do another one for the circle. Do here and here. Here and here. There we are. We're routing, surfaces through various points here, as you can tell. It's really pretty interesting that you can do that. For an entire mesh like this, I've never tried one on a closed object like that. So I don't think that's going to be the right way. I think that's going to be like, in Greg's example that he showed earlier, what you do is you split out, the surfaces that you're looking to work with, right? Instead of having the entire, surface model here, which kind of will get in the way of performance because it's, you got a lot of different things that you're looking for. You want to get like just the area of the model that you want to work with. That would be a highly recommended way of working. I'm going to create a new plane because this part is not in plane, it looks like. So I'm going to create a 3-point plane using several of these points here to help me get one in place. So that way I have a sketching plane to work on. 3-point plane. There we are. Now I have that, right? And I am going to construct a rectangle over the top of this. There we are. Okay. Then what you'd end up doing is you'd split out an extrusion that extrude using that sketch a surface, right? Symmetrically. So that way we have something to cut through, right? Then we can split the mesh part with the surface part. That might take a moment. All right, well, that's going. Let me just kind of take a look at the list because there's so much stuff in this update. All right, there's split. All right, so now we're part 7. So let's get rid of all the other stuff. I can delete those bodies. Shift P to get rid of that. So now I have, this nice mesh surface that I can do a lot better stuff with, right? In fact, it's a solid. I'm just going to try to delete this up. That might not be the way of doing it, though. All right. Yeah, this really needs to be a separate mesh, like, without a solid attached to it to do what I really want to do in this particular operation. But if you look at Greg's video, you're going to see some stuff. So I'll put a link to it after the show's over. Move boundary now gets some additional options, by the way. So in this particular example, I won't build the whole thing here live, but you can see what Roy has done here is he's extruded a surface offset from another surface at 1 inch, right? So parametrically defining another surface to extrude beyond, in this case, probably to create a nice surface intersection right here, right? So, being able to get to a nice curved edge that you could perform some nice face blend on is probably the intent here. But being able to utilize surfaces parametrically with the offset option now, that is new in this particular update. Also new, frames that lock to profile faces. So if you had to run a frame curve along a non-planar object, you'd probably see where this comes in handy over here. So if you had some sort of frame, we'll choose rectangular bar. That sounds good to me. And I'll pick that curve. That might be too big for it. Hold on. We can use our handy dandy new option, constrain surface, to put a surface in a weird direction. So I'll do that right now. All right, so we got that cube to help us start. We'll put a constrained surface in from point A, B, and C. Maybe something with a curve like that. So now we have a curve. And imagine putting in a frame element along one of these edge curves, right? How do you get it to lock in along that, right? Now, most people didn't even know you could do that, but you can. You can now lock which face you want to have it, respect, right? So I'm going to pick this face right here, so that way it will actually follow it perfectly, right? And you can also rotate the angle, of course, as well, so you can get exactly what you're looking for. So that would be a very difficult thing to get before, but now obviously very easy. We look at our cut list, for this as well. It should auto calculate it. Let's see what happens. Select all frames. Oh yeah, there it is, 157.43 for the length of material on that particular frame. And if I keep on going, obviously you'd have to. Actually, that's looking pretty good. I mean, this is getting to the point now where you could have very, very interesting shapes now for your frames. Based on any kind of reference input. Oh, I didn't show you this one yet. The ability to expand and contract all the folders, really helpful in large assemblies where you've built a nice kind of structured folder list. You can see I have this cord inside this power. I also have some mates that are just for certain fasteners and things like that. So how do I expand and contract all the folders? Just a right click away, right click here. You can expand all of your levels, and you can collapse all the levels to get right back to where you want. And you can do it, you can drill into a folder and expand just the selected ones here as well, right? Expand all under, or expand, not expand all, expand selected. Collapse all, then expand selected. Okay, pretty cool. Some new options here, by the way, that made a lot of sense to add when you're exchanging data with other CAD users, being able to select which version of Rhino in Part Studios is now a choice. So if I needed to share just this gear cover to somebody now in Rhino, we've had that for quite some time, but now you can choose which version you want to store, send as, right? Um, there was also some updates to the edit last healthy moment tool. If I had something that was broken, you would have edit healthy moment in here. So let's break something on purpose here. Get rid of a sketch plane here. It should break a bunch of stuff. Edit healthy moment of sketch one. Now we're seeing some nice highlighting here. There we are. I don't know what that is, but I saw it in the release notes, so I just want to. Maybe I'm not seeing exactly what is there. In data management, you can now not get boxed into a corner. Allow rejection by the creator, even when an approver is required on a release, right? So, you should be able to reject a release candidate if you were the one to create it. If it's gone on to another step in the workflow where the approver is not you, then you were kind of locked at that point, and you'd have to create a new release candidate. In this case, the originator can now stop an approval process from continuing. If they've noticed something and they don't want the everything to to go through, right? There's some other nice examples of things in Render Studio in this particular update. So perhaps we can jump into a Render Studio. Once again, Render Studio, very easy to get into. Onshape Professional Enterprise. Have it. You can do full rendering in the cloud, and it will respect the colors and textures that you bring in. Let's just do a part studio here with the gear cover. I like setting it in to dark mode for rendering. And you can see the green comes through. They had set for the machine faces earlier. But what I might want to do, and you see the basic look looks really nice, but you can now add a texture to an appearance in a much faster way, right? So if I set a material that I like to see, maybe I did want it to be aluminum or something like that, right? So let's do a search for aluminum. Anodized aluminum on that entire part, right? But maybe I wanted to have a different texture on it. I would go into the appearance manager over here, and I would find the bitmap first, right? So I'd find bitmap, EMP. I could type today. That'd be great. Here are our appearance functions. Let's see. Import bitmap file. There we are. So I drag and drop that right onto the texture. Right now I can browse any texture I want to apply that I might have access to. Like I have a bitmap file of a texture of a certain thing, right? So let's find one. All right, I go to Polyhaven quite often to get these textures. So maybe I want it to look something like this, something like this willow bark, right? So I would just download that. Then I would import onto that object. That could be a face or the entire part. Let's pick the entire part. There we are. There's the bitmap file. I can browse to the import option. Go to my downloads. There it should be. I probably have to unzip it first. There we are. Textures. And then there's a JPEG, ping file, things like that. So that's one way of doing it, just getting a bitmap or ping file. All right, now it's in there. Just need to set a new version on it since we changed the Onshape document. Now we're going to bring in that bark. Maybe that's not the right way. Let's see what see how Roy did this. All right, we're going to select the part. Ah, there we are. Right click and use bitmap file. All right, let's try that. Thought I missed something. All right, let's clear the appearance. This is also new in the new update. What I'm going to do here is just go to the gear cover. And you can, unlink to a previous appearance. Just right click on the part and say link to part studio appearance. That's a new option. Okay, here we go. So link to part studio appearance. That will bring me right back to my previous condition. All right. Now I can right click on the aluminum color here. On things that support it. Let's look for some HDPE actually, because that might be something that supports it. HDPE. Let's just search for it under Blast. I'm sure I'm giving it the wrong name. I'm looking for the for it by name, but I may not have the same item in my library. Here we go. So this one supports this. So for diffuse tint, I can use a bitmap file. I can then find the bitmap that I've uploaded. And that gives me, yeah, that's what I'm looking. So now it's changed the bitmap to that option. And of course, I could go into that texture and change the tiling of it to something smaller, which is usually what you need to do to see it. All right. So now we have that look and feel on that part. All right. So, a lot of different things in this particular update, as you can see. Um, there's really only one way to really dive in and discover, and it's the way I'm doing here. Like, just kind of follow along, look at these examples and understand the new functionality. I was really excited to see it come out on Thursday, and it's going to be, being able to see the cosmetic threads, being able to take mesh data and turn it into real object data, having a routing curve feature that supports so many different situations. It really is something that I'm excited about. So thanks for joining me. It's been an hour already. I can't believe it, but thanks so much for joining me. Hope you had some key points here that you're going to really enjoy, and I will see you in 3 weeks. All right. Have fun. Bye bye.